All right. Let's start. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome the viewers of Tuskegee University Interdisciplinary Seminar Series. Before we introduce the speaker and the topic for today, I would first of all like to acknowledge a good number of sponsors of this interdisciplinary seminar series, amongst which we list the Andrew Mellon Foundation, the Tuskegee University Faculty Senate, the Tuskegee University Office of the Provost, the National Park Services, the College of Arts and Sciences, the College of Agriculture, Environment, and Nutrition Sciences, as well as the Department of Modern Languages, Communications, and Philosophy. I would be remiss not to add to the list of supporters of this interdisciplinary seminar series an organization that I coordinate, WARFOT, which is the Writers of African Origins in the Diaspora. I would like to thank them for their unrelenting support for this interdisciplinary seminar series. And for those who might be watching this for the first time, the Tuskegee University Interdisciplinary Seminar Series is a series that spotlights our public intellectuals, our academicians, people with moral probity and integrity, thought leaders, moral leaders, to come and tell us about their findings in their respective walks of life. And today with us in this series, we are happy and delighted to have Dr. Rita Fankam. Dr. Rita Fankam is an academician all the way from Cameroon, and she is here to talk to us about the education of the deaf and hard of hearing, especially in Cameroon. And I am sure would have the delight to see how these challenges, while localized in Cameroon, could be challenges that is global. However, the way we're going to proceed in her presentation is Professor Benjamin Fishkin of Tuskegee University would interact with Dr. Fankam Rita by asking her questions, thought-provoking questions, which concerns this area of endeavor, which is education of the deaf and hard of hearing. Now, Dr. Benjamin Fishkin happens to be a colleague of mine, an esteemed colleague of mine at Tuskegee University, and he is an Africanist. Let his skin color not fool you. He's an Africanist, and I'm sure he would be delighted to ask really probing questions about educating the deaf and the blind, whether the deaf and the hard of hearing in Cameroon. So I would hand over the floor to Dr. Fishkin and Dr. Fankam Rita. You have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Indy. Before I start, let me just say it's, really a blessing for all of us to be here and for Dr. Fankam to be visiting from Cameroon. And thank God that we have the opportunity to be here to discuss such wonderful topics. Now, just a word about what my approach is going to be here. In front of me, I have 3 sections of paper. So, okay, and much like Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, one is too warm and one is too cold, and the middle one is just right, okay? The one that's just right is going to be a discussion all to do about the specific issues about what issues about education and disability and how they are dealt with or not dealt with. That's really what I want to know about, and I think the subject is about how these issues and how issues can affect learning and education in Cameroon when disabilities are concerned. Okay. What I'm going to try to do is start a little more general with talking about education as a whole, and maybe touch upon a little bit of some other things that I've noticed over the past few years. And then as we go further, get more and more specific and probing into what Dr. Fankam thinks about the state of this issue or these issues and what's going on there in Cameroon and how people are getting along, or it might be my take, how they're perhaps not getting their needs met in these areas. Now, in the last couple of years, I've been reading more and more about African literature, and I've always been noticing that it just seems like there's this air of there being a tailspin in Cameroon, and that for whatever the reason is, and hopefully this will come out in the next hour, people don't seem to have the rhythm and balance that they need to go about their lives and to enjoy them. Not saying everything's perfect, but it seems like things are askew, or sort of like building a house on a foundation that is not a level one. Okay, so let me start by asking Dr. Fankam about this idea of disabilities is an issue. But before we get to that, education issues are at the forefront of my mind. For example, Dr. Fankam, I know that many schools in Cameroon are existing, but perhaps not enough. And in the northwest and southwest portion, nearly 80% of those schools has been shuttered. So I'm assuming that the students, disability wise or not disability wise, simply don't have a school to go to. Is there anything you'd like to say about this issue, just about the quantity of schools?
Thank you, Dr. Fishkin. Thank you for the interest you're showing about Cameroon and your thoughtfulness of wanting to know more and project Cameroon to the world. Yes, education has been like at a stalemate in the northwest and southwest of Cameroon for some time now because of the civil strife. We've had educational problems since 2017 because of the I won't say the war or the civil war. We say the misunderstanding that started since 2016 goes back to the origin of the nation Cameroon. We are a country with two subsystems of education. The French-speaking part of Cameroon, they are educated in using the French official language, and the English-speaking part of Cameroon are educated using the English language. Because of the unifying factor that wasn't well coordinated, we have this strife now. Now there is this problem, the war, that because of that, students don't go to school. In every country where there is a war or civil disturbances, students don't go to school. So same too in Cameroon. Children were not going to school for some years because the educational system was attacked by so-called terrorists and the military. But during the last 3-4 years, schools have started functioning more in urban areas than in rural areas because of the insecurity. As for the number of schools, of course, with a war, the rural areas, and especially children, mothers, and girls with disabilities, they suffer more. They can't run to other towns. They can't have the protection they need to survive. So that's what is going on, as in any other country where there is a civil strife.
Okay. Now, you mentioned this idea about the educational system. In those sections of the country that I mentioned where there aren't schools, are there attempts to build more of them, or that just doesn't seem to be happening at the moment?
No, there are strifes that are making a lot. The government is making a lot of attempts to build schools. They announce schools, but most often is the elites of the regions that build the schools. In some parts of the country, unfortunately, they don't have classrooms up to the moment we're talking. So it is now the elites or those who have made things happen in life who come back and try to build the schools. But the government on paper has established the schools, but more of them are on paper than the fiscal
Or
structures.
they're on paper. I know I know from the last few years watching the news, the famous newsman Lawrence O'Donnell was involved with getting desks for children, not in
Yeah.
Cameroon, I believe it in Mali. And from a Western point of view, it's sort of like, how could this happen? Because these things are so basic. But if we tilt our discussion a little bit, is it possible that some students in other parts of the country who might not have many resources, the schools are there, but they cannot attend because for financial reasons they can't pay the fees or that sort of thing? Is that equally a hindrance?
Of course, it is like in every part of the world, I guess. When you can't afford basic utilities, you can't buy books, uniforms, transportation, you don't go to school. And that's what is happening in most rural areas of the country, especially the war-torn zones. The children don't go to school because they lack the facilities to go to
Mhm.
school. You talked about Mali, there is Sudan, there was in Niger, but things are getting better in Niger. Even in Nigeria, where we have development, in some rural areas, children don't go to school. So I think it's a global phenomenon that when things are hard, children don't go to school. They suffer more.
Yes, and this causes other problems. Perhaps they're not germane to what we're talking about here, and I'm going to try to very hard to stick to our
Mm.
direction here. But that can cause family issues. You have a child that for those 6 or 7 hours of the day normally would be at school, they're home, who will watch the child, etc. But I don't want to go into that right now. I
Mm.
do want to talk about and begin to turn our discussion into what's going on with disabilities. One thing I'm very interested in is the Anglophone Cameroon crisis. Has that made the educational issue and by extension the disability issue worse in recent years, um, or is that perhaps something that's going on, but that's not the main problem we're talking about right now?
Well, yes, it's made it worse. The problem was there already because in educating the persons with disabilities, first of all, most of the institutions in North and Southwest, I should not say most, it's all the institutions that are existing are either missionaries who establish the schools or private individuals. So, but with the war, there was a stop. Children did not go to school at all for some 2, 3, 4 years, especially the children with disabilities, because how would they, for example, the deaf, they will not hear gunshots. They physically disabled. They will not be able to run. Then now, with schools coming back, most parents cannot afford to pay the fees. Even though most of the schools are subvented by the government, parents aren't able to at least give the little they should to contribute for the education of their children. So the war has made it worse. I can talk about the town called Kumba. We had the first school for the deaf is in Kumba. But up to last year, or this academic year, the academic year ending, you had only about 46 children who are in school, a school that used to have about 200 children. They can't still, the parents don't still have the confidence of bringing the children back to the towns for them to go to school. So that's the situation. And I guess that's what happens.
You know, these kinds of situations have, you know, whenever there's a war or conflict, or I don't think it would be, I don't know if it would be appropriate for me to call the conflict a civil war, but clearly it's a difficult time. This affects children and their education. I'm often thinking about how in England during the war, children had to leave the major cities to get away from the bombing.
Exactly.
Now that I've spent a few minutes with you talking about things in a more general way, what I'd like to do is slightly turn our attention to not just education stuff or education items, I really shouldn't say stuff, but to issues about disabilities perhaps in a more medical sense than an academic one, if I can be so bold, and look at how these things have affected education, but right now, not so much for the whole population, but for a much more minor population. I don't know the percentages of students in Cameroon that have some sort of disability. Perhaps that depends on the disability. But I do know in my research that 72% of the children are not able to read age-appropriate material when they're about age 10. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, if you happen to have a child that had some sort of a disability, if they were deaf, if they were blind, okay, if they had some physical impairment, and I know from our other conversations, you mentioned that your dad had an impairment that spurred you on. And so to get us started on this new avenue, is there anything you'd like to say regarding your father?
Well, yes, just a bit. My father was an educationist and he was physically disabled. His physical disability didn't stop him from achieving things in life. And because of that, he actually created a group, brought in the people with disabilities to try to encourage them to uh, be more proactive in life. And with that, he survived and helped other people to make it in life. He weaved baskets and taught many other people how to weave baskets. But the problem we have with disabilities in Cameroon. The visible disabilities can easily be like you're physically disabled, it is seen. You are blind, it is obvious. But the other disabilities, we don't have the means. Cameroon in general doesn't have the means of identifying the different types of disabilities. That's the medical aspect of it. A child can get up like 5 years before the child is like identified as autism or autistic or deaf. I think deafness is something that if you are aware when the child is little, you can start trying to find out the medical reasons why the child is deaf, except she or he is post-deaf, that is after the age of speaking. Then you notice that the child is not talking. You notice it at home. It's not like you go to school. Other forms, you go to school, then the teachers, in questioning the child, then they realize that this child, because he or she is failing a lot, the reason is that the child is not sitting, doesn't hear well in class or see. So those are the challenges. The needs assessment, though there's very little or no, maybe or recent in towns, you can easily assess whether the child has a disability or not. But in the villages or rural areas, it's difficult. Yes.
Okay.
I guess that's what you were
I
asking.
understand. And I appreciate you being candid about a personal matter like that. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, what are the implications of the subsystems of education regarding writing and sign language involving people that have been deprived of their hearing? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, yeah, thanks for that particular question because it is a major concern. In the French-speaking areas of Cameroon, they use the French Sign Language. In the English-speaking areas of Cameroon, they use the American Sign Language, which was introduced by Andrew Foster, 1975. So the early people who were deaf, they went to school and they were taught the American Sign Language. But the problem I discovered, which is the focus of my work, is that writing influences, their signing influences their written English. And the lack of a proper training structure for teachers and proper form of text, the textbooks or the teachers use to teach the children the English language makes it difficult for them to really advance. The level of English, written English especially, the level of written English for the grade 8 will be like grade 3. I don't know whether it's the same problem. Yes, from my findings, it is the same problem here in the developed world, but with if they have proper training of the teachers, and they have proper text to use, the children may do better.
Okay, but
I have an example. There is this young man who graduated from Boya University. He's hard of hearing. He has a degree in the English language and had an admission in Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. But when he came here to go to school, he couldn't cope, neither with the signing nor with the written English. So the gap is a bit wide because of the background he had before coming to Gallaudet University. Does
okay.
that make sense?
Thank you for that. It does make sense. You mentioned issues about textbooks. It hadn't been my plan to go into this too much, but some of those who are deaf would not have the books that they need. That's an accurate statement.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm also want to point out or get into the record that um, the numbers about textbooks in Cameroon, these are among the lowest in sub-Saharan Africa. So what I said at the start about balance and rhythm and issues about there being a tailspin, very hard for us to correct these problems without the books that they might need. Now, let me also ask or continue in this vein. The signing situation, there's a sign language for England and for America and a sign language in Africa. Does this become a problem?
Yeah,
Um,
excuse me, there can't be a sign language for Africa because Africa, we have different countries. South Africa has a sign language. Nigeria has a
yes,
sign
of
language.
course, I misspoke. Yeah, but
Okay.
my point is, this makes things even perhaps the Anglophone problem even more of an issue, correct?
The educational problem of Cameroon, yes, it makes it difficult. It is a bit complex. It is the language, yes, the two languages makes it complicated. Because, for example, when you have news, during news important, I don't know why the term some important and some not important, but we don't have captioning in the main national station, CRTV, doesn't have captioning for, first of all, if they had captioning, the children who are watching the news should be able to read, right? But then they don't have the sign interpreter. The one interpreter who comes on during the newscast is a francophone. He signs in French, the French sign language. So the non the educated deaf Anglophones, they can understand his sign, some of it, but the non-educated will not understand. So the two languages, they complicate. And if Cameroon, the government could take it seriously and work on the codification of a sign language, I guess that would be very helpful.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mhm.
What are some of the instruments that are used to assess students that might have disabilities? Can you talk about that? How is it not only determined who has a disability, but perhaps the severity or the degree of that disability?
That's what I was saying a few minutes ago. The severity of disability can be detected in class if you're going to school.
Yes.
At birth, if the parents are like located around a hospital where they can take the child to, and they have specialists there, then the children can be detected. Um, but otherwise, there are no major, I won't know, I'm not a medical doctor, but the one hospital that had the possibility of detecting deafness, Zimbingo Hospital, which has been after during the war it was shaky a bit, but now they are in Bafsam. But I still am not sure about the types of instruments they use. Like I said, to the best of my knowledge, parents know that their children are deaf when they get to an age where the children can't communicate, can't, a child there is babbling, so you are still waiting. The child will babble for some time, then you're waiting to see, maybe this child will talk one day. Then you realize that the child is 5 years old and it's not talking. So for the
Okay.
blind, it's easy. You notice that your child is blind. You notice it, you as a parent. It's your place. You will see that your child can see you. That is easy.
Sure.
For autistic children, it's difficult. That's another. Then the other intellectual disability, that is out of it, because until your child goes to school, you will not know that what is happening to the child. A child might be throwing tantrums. You think that it's just tantrums. Meanwhile, the child has a problem. So medically, it's difficult. We are lacking a bit.
Hey, let me tell you a quick story. But it's important. One of my best friends has a daughter, and when she was not literally a baby, but just a few years old,
Mm-hmm.
she had some kind of ocular issue with her hearing, and
Mm-hmm.
we all, 7 or 8 or 9 friends of ours, we all helped, and she got some kind of treatment involving I'm sure fancy equipment and machinery.
Cochlear implants.
It got an implant, and from that point forward, she could hear, and now she's thriving all these years later. She's in college in
Mm-hmm.
Indiana, I think, right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the mechanical stuff, like doctors having the equipment they need to help a student who's deaf, be it something to measure these issues or fix them, anything like that there? I mean, all I can tell you is I've known parents in this country, if there was a medical problem, they could, in theory anyway, go to another city or even another part of the country and get quote unquote expert help or expert facilities. Any of that in Cameroon right now?
Yes, we in Cameroon we have assistive devices, mostly in the mission, the CBC hospitals. You have assistive devices, but corrective devices, I'm not really sure. I haven't
Okay.
seen any child who's gone through an operation and because the child was deaf and the child can hear. So far, no. But when
Mhm.
they go to school, they can have assistive devices, something that can help the amplifiers, that can help them
Amplifier.
hear.
Okay.
Yes, so the
Okay.
blind, they go to hospitals, they can say if there's something they can correct. For blindness, they're more advanced in Cameroon because you have the eye hospitals nearly in every region, which is easy. You might easily get your eyes corrected.
I
But
understand.
for yes, but for the deaf eye, so far I don't know any child who has gone through that successfully.
Okay. Well, frankly, the science part is something I probably can't, I definitely cannot grasp. Okay. But
Mm-hmm.
it interests me that this child with this problem, it was able to be addressed, or at least
Yeah,
uh,
but it is because of the modern technology that this world has. Because even when I was in Gallaudet in 2010, there were some um, Saudi Arabian students who came in. They had cochlear implants. They could have it. They can afford it. All those medical things are quite expensive, and to the studies have shown that most of these disabilities they occur in rural areas. in rural areas, you have more poor people, right?
Of course, yeah.
That's it. So that is the problem. You can't be trying to at least sustain the family, and then you're thinking of something like going to where for an implant. I won't even think about the cost.
Okay.
Mhm.
Is the government at all involved or invested? I use that word in quotation marks. I'm not just talking about money, but where there's a real desire and motivation to solve some of these problems, or which, in your opinion, is that way down on the list?
Yes, the medical aspect of it, yes, I think the government is making an effort, a lot of effort to train specialists. Every day you have a specialist coming up, but like I said, what we lack is the facilities. But in the educational aspect, the government, there is a lack. There is a lack. The medical aspect, there, I think the government is doing the best they can. I don't know, but is if the will is there, more will be done. For now, our focus is those who are already there. The children who are 8, 10 years are not even going to school. That's where we should try and see how best we can try to educate them so that they can fit into the society, right?
Mhm. Okay. What about the government providing support for the teaching and learning process, where teachers would be assisting and accommodating and helping those with handicaps? I had read somewhere that in the past there have been teacher shortages. Now, that they were probably talking about education overall, but I'm
Mhm.
sure that must trickle down to deal with people that have handicaps as well. Um,
Mhm.
are those issues that are being solved, or do they remain a persistent sort of thorn in the side of the educational system involving disabilities?
As far as I'm concerned, yes, there is still a lack because even the teachers training colleges that have been created, the level of the education for the specialized teachers is lacking. They do the same, almost the same formation that teachers who are teaching mainstream schools have. And I believe that there is more to be done. We need special text. Right now, I'm working on a teaching manual to teach teachers how to teach the English language in an inclusive classroom. There is an national inclusive policy for the education of persons with disabilities, children with disabilities in the same classroom with, in quote, normal children. They're supposed to have attend the same schools, follow the same courses in the same classrooms. But the teachers are not qualified. They don't have it. You, everybody thinks that as teaching the English language or teaching, especially the deaf, is just learning sign language. No, you need to know how to teach the English language with learners with communication problems. It must not only be the deaf. There is a special method of teaching learners with communication problems the English language. So if we start from that basic, that then we will understand that they are at least trying to train teachers proficiently to teach. Everything starts from language, right?
Mhm.
From the language. If you can't read the English language, can you understand chemistry? No.
It's interesting you say that because in my other research with the language problems, I read about students who didn't know French at all, but found themselves having to study engineering in a class taught in French, which would see, boy, would that be an almost impossible task. But I
They
do
learn,
understand. Go ahead.
they learn the language.
They
They
have to.
learn.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember when I was in Gallaudet, these Chinese students came in. They were always in front of their computers. And I'm like, what are they doing there? Always. I realized that they were translating all their notes into Chinese before they understood what was happening. So I
Okay.
guess you have to learn the language.
Okay. You mentioned teachers a moment ago, and some are being trained. Um, for someone who are young and looking for a profession, um, are they being encouraged to go into a profession like this? Are their salaries high enough to attract and things like that to study the disabilities? I mean, if somebody were, I have students that are 20 years old.
Mhm.
Okay, they have 2 more years to go here at school. And if in a parallel world, if I were to say, might perhaps this is something you might want to pursue, oftentimes I've heard students say, well, that is of interest, but the resources are not enough for me to really pursue it in earnest or
Mhm.
completely.
Mhm.
How does that work in Cameroon?
I don't think they just encourage them to go to school. Like they give more allowances. They don't grade children with disabilities differently, but in admission into secondary or high schools, they are giving more opportunities. But even in the job sites now, they are giving more opportunities if they can get to that level. But my problem is, do they get to that level? 3 years ago, yes, about 3 years ago, two young girls graduated from the Boya University, and they wanted to pursue their education. But how will they get into higher teacher training college? Who will teach them? So they are discouraged at that level. They say we can't make it, so they drop. You have the same number of children who get up to the our first school living certificate. That's our first certificate. How do they get to secondary school? They need sponsors. I don't know. They can't afford. When you can't afford, you don't go to school, whether you are disabled or not. You don't go to school because there is a percentage that your parents must afford. That's it.
Okay. Um, are children that have disabilities, you mentioned before about when a child is blind, the parents know that immediately, or perhaps
Easily.
it takes a little bit longer if the child is having hearing problems.
Mhm.
But are they encouraged to go to school? Do school officials, for example, approach a parent in that situation? Is there literature or resources for them? Or is the parents more or less left to themselves to try to solve that one?
No, the parents are left to themselves to solve that problem.
That's
It's yeah.
it sounds terrible.
Yes, it does. But you have some organizations that come in, like what my organization is doing. I run an organization, Deaf Educational Network, sponsored mostly by a Green Grant Fund. We work with families with disabilities, with children with disabilities. We have trained some girls who left secondary school and primary school, the first living certificate, and they can't go further. We've trained them with some vocational training that they're doing sewing. So some organizations help in that case, but you can't, like, it's not like open. You go to the village and announce that everybody comes to school. What I was trying to do from the base before the civil strife started was to do home-based training, teaching, identify the families that have children with disabilities, start if it is communication disability, train those who had tried and succeeded in first school, they are adults, train them how to go in there into the villages and help the parents communicate with their children. Unfortunately, the strife started. So I'm praying that by the end of this, if things are calmer, we'll go back to it. It can help.
What's
So that before
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
home-based education.
home-based education.
Yeah, so you train adults, deaf or physically able people, if the child is, so that the parents, they understand that this child can go to school. They use them as models. If you see an adult deaf girl come into your home and teaches you how to sign with your children, you will understand that this child can go to school. So when it's school age, you can easily send your child to school. So
Okay.
that's my prayer, that with the end, because since my focus is the English language, I can't work more in the Francophone area where it's calm. I prefer going back to the Northwest, Southwest, and work with the English-speaking community.
Okay. If a child were to go to school with a disability and they were in the classroom and ran into some medical type of difficulty, would there be a nurse or medical people at the school who could help them right then and there? Or does that then become a larger problem where they would have to perhaps go somewhere else?
There is stipulation for that. There is stipulation for
Good.
A nurse and a dispensary in every school. So now it depends on which area of the severity of the injury. If it is a minor injury, the nurse in the school can handle. If not, the child has to be rushed to the nearest dispensary.
So that could be a very harrowing experience for the child potentially.
Yes, of course. It would be if it gets to that. Like even in normal mainstream schools, if there is a nurse and a dispensary, but if an accident is severe, the child is taken to hospital.
Okay. One thing I came across, let's see if I can get this correct. The government now spends about 19% of its resources on education. That's general education. Now, I won't hold you to a number specifically, but I wondered, of that 19%, how much is spent on students or children that have disabilities, that are deaf or blind or something of that nature? Can you just approximate? I won't hold you to a specific figure.
I won't get to 5%. I don't think I can give 5% because yes, it's difficult to give a percentage because of data. We don't have
lack of data. There's a lack of data.
Lack of data. Because of lack of data, we can't say in this zone we have this number of children with disabilities or this number of, I tried to, when I was doing the study on situational analysis of persons with disabilities in Cameroon, we tried to get data. Data dated back to 2010. No, we can't use that as to solve problems of 2024 or 2023 then. So it's lack of data. We don't have that. And that is a big problem. If we could have if there was a means of doing the feasibility studies, going home to home, then we'll come out with knowing if the government is doing enough or not. Now we can't even say if the government is trying or not.
Okay. Now you mentioned roughly a 5% figure.
I'll give 5%.
Okay, now in Cameroon, are the percentage of children with disabilities more than 5? I would guess it would be.
Yes.
I would guess it would be. So my point is, I mean, if you can look at my left and right hand, there's an unevenness about that to have, well, such a percentage, we have issues, and then we have resources, but the percentages are sort of out of whack. There's still a need to handle these problems, and it's at best a situation that's not completely perfect. Let me.
I agree with you.
You do. Thanks.
I do.
As far as the government is concerned, you were talking about the training of teachers before.
It should be a focus.
I know in this country, one of my relatives many years ago went to a teacher's school or a teacher's college. Do they exist in Cameroon where people?
They do.
They do. And
I graduated from one.
But people wish to go to them and they have no problem finding students to fill those places?
No, they don't. They don't. When we talk about disabilities, we talk about special education. Special educational needs should be primordial, but the schools that exist don't have the facilities for special educational needs. That's what I'm talking about here.
Okay.
You have teachers training colleges all over the place, but it's like a normal classroom with normal students. So how do you train teachers to take care of disabilities when they don't have the facilities, when you can't even train them on how to use these facilities to teach students? That is a big lack.
So the people are there, but the facilities are not.
Are not there, yes.
Okay, are you optimistic that this will get better with time?
That's my prayer. That's my prayer. I don't know about being optimistic or not, but we have just to pray that one day it happens, because there is a need. There is a need for that. So I don't know. There's a lot of I don't know in Cameroon right now.
It would certainly be a nice thing. Now, let me ask, do you find this to have been this is a gratifying career for you, that you enjoy it? Or I would find it satisfying on one level, but also perhaps a bit frustrating, because you see children, they're good children, they're beautiful, and they can't get what they need. Is that an accurate way to? Am I being too severe?
No, you aren't. It's frustrating. If you go to the schools I have visited, mostly the deaf schools, because that's my specialty comes from. You go to the teacher training colleges, then you compare. It's unfair to talk about Cameroon. I'll talk about Kenya. I went to Kenya last year to visit the facilities that they have. I was pleasantly surprised that Kenya is quite advanced. They have schools that are well structured, the teachers are trained, and they do continuous assessment, continuous training, in-service training, so that the teachers are current with what is going on. It is quite frustrating to see a very intelligent child. When you try to communicate with the child, and then you realize that they could do better, but how?
Sure.
That's it. So it's quite frustrating.
One of the professors I've done some work with is Emmanuel Frudeau, who's from Cameroon. He told me that for his education or to get his career moving in the right direction, he left Cameroon. Now, I don't think, and he went to another African nation. I don't expect you to go to Kenya literally, but did you ever cross your mind to say, boy, if I worked in this environment, how easier my life would be, or how better trained I might be, or what better quality of students might be there?
It did. Last year, I was like, I wish I had gone earlier when I went to Kenya. You realize that it could, my education. I had a Fulbright grant in 2009, 2010. I had a Fulbright grant. I was in Gallaudet, and I went back home. I did a research, went back home, and defended my PhD. Unfortunately, the system is what it is. I don't understand. I haven't applied my knowledge. So when I went to Kenya last year, and I'm like, I wish I had thought about even trying Kenya. Maybe I would have used it better. But right now, I think I want to make things happen in Cameroon if possible. I'm working on this manual. I hope I can get some subvention to publish it so that I can help train teachers at least at my level, start from somewhere. Somebody else can pick it up from somewhere. But it's sad. It's sad to know that you have all that knowledge and you're not applying it. Yes, it's frustrating.
Okay. Is there we've all, as we wind up, we are talking a lot about the care the students get or don't get. With my own students, I always tell them to look into the psychological area of what's going on. Do you think they're struggling psychologically, not just with having the malady or issue, but the idea that it's not being addressed, if you will, head on? Nobody really is really helping them. They may be too young to be aware of this, but do you think there's a psychological burden or penalty that the students have to go through because of they're living in a nation that has these limitations?
The psychological aspect of it all is more on the parents when the children are young, and then now on the adults, all the expectations. I guess it happens everywhere, but it is psychologically defeating. I've told you about this young man. He ended up here. The two other young girls, I don't know where they have ended up, but I think they are all out of Cameroon because I told them that just give me some time. Let me see what I can do. If you just, why don't you try getting into the competitive, write competitive exams and see. The answer is, how will we study after? So it is frustrating and it is psychologically disturbing.
Sure.
Not only on the students when they are aware, even on the parents, it's very psychologically disturbing.
Mhm.
Because that's a lot of burden. Because even normal, we say normal in quotes, families, they have children who go to school and they can't work, they can't have jobs. They at least have gone to school. But the children with disabilities, is worse on them because our parents do not even understand what they are going through. And they themselves, they don't understand what they are going through. So if there could be some harnessing of force to make these children sit and take care of themselves, first of all, we have to try that. Then they will be able to do something with their lives.
Okay. Earlier, I mentioned a professor who wrote, and you mentioned things about Kenya. Just to finish up here, he was forced to go to Nigeria to get an education, and he described it, and then he went back to Cameroon, and he
Mhm.
said he had the misfortune, and I'm quoting here, that
Mhm.
he had the misfortune of, quote, getting used to things running smoothly, unquote, only to go back to Cameroon and see things were a bit more messy. And I wanted to just point that out, and I'm hoping in the future that these problems can get resolved. I asked you before if you were optimistic. You said you were praying. How long have you been praying for such an outcome?
For as long as I can remember as an adult, we pray for change every day, but nobody knows when it will come because the political situation is not advancing the cause of anything. So if you don't pray, what do you do? You are optimistic. You can't be optimistic when you don't see the light. When you see a glimmer of hope there, you say, okay, I'm optimistic. Right now, I'm not optimistic. I'm just praying.
You don't even see a glimmer of
A
hope.
glimmer, I don't. As far
Okay.
where I'm
Okay.
sitting, I don't
Well,
see a glimmer.
okay. Well,
But I pray that it will come.
well, Dr. Fankam, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. I've been reading and writing about Africa for a couple of years. Is there anything you'd like to ask me?
Thank you, Dr. Fishkin. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I think I would like to know why the interest in Cameroon.
Why am I interested in Cameroon?
Mhm.
Well, um, I am interested in, as I began to study more and more about Africa, the language stuff and the issues there are close to my heart. It might be 6 or 7 years ago, maybe more. I had applied for a Fulbright to go over there, but it was too dangerous, or
Okay.
with all of the fighting, or at least that's what we surmise.
Mhm.
And this fascinates me that I could understand a war or a civil war with two armies lining up and there being a line between them. I can't
Mhm.
really grasp, or I'm sort of fascinated by the territory is, well, in what language should the laws be? Or in what language or culture should the school calendar be? Or the menus and the rest? This kind of, I'll call it cultural
Okay,
warfare,
good.
is very interesting to me.
Mhm.
And once I have gotten through the initial shock, it wasn't easy. There really is a lot of fascinating things going on. But like you said, without that gleam of optimism, it does have the potential to make me weep or reduce and have
Oh,
tears.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I wasn't discouraging you.
No,
I
no,
wasn't.
no. This is before.
So this is how I'll put it. If somebody like you show
Yeah,
this amount of interest, it encourages us.
yeah,
And okay, it means we can work together to make things happen, right?
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
on that note, I would say I'm optimistic because if maybe if we had started the conversation with me understanding why you're interested in Cameroon, I would have known that, okay, this language issue is something that interests him. So, on that note, you should understand that the English is spoken and written and official in the English speaking part, that is northwest, southwest of Cameroon. And you have universities all over Cameroon now. They teach English, it's some subjects in English. You have English speaking professors in, for example, the universities in Yaoundé was the first university. So, of course, the official two languages are used. But like in the University of Ebolowa, which is in the center south region, they teach in English. You have professors who teach in English there. You have professors who teach in English in Marwa. You have professors who teach in English in Gandre. So there is hope. On that note, there is hope that the English language will strive. So,
Yes, and all the while there are these struggles for books. I don't know about what's going on so far this year, but the president is enjoying spending time in Switzerland.
not yet. No, he's an old man. He's in Cameroon right now.
Okay, but you understand
I
okay,
understand. But
okay.
that is a political aspect of it that if we start criticizing presidents here, we'll not get out of this conversation. But for now, having people interested in the language problems in Cameroon, there I'm optimistic that one day the Cameroonian Sign Language will evolve, and these children with communication problems, they will have a language to communicate among themselves and be able to study uh, in the English language. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Fishkin.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Fishkin. Thank you, Dr. Fankam, for this riveting exchange. I think before I really round up, I might just like to ask Dr. Fishkin first. Give me two main takeaways in less than 30 seconds from your exchange, and then I'll give Dr. Fankam, Rita, the opportunity to summarize everything, to conclude, to give us the big conclusion.
I'm sorry, two quick takeaways that I have.
Yes.
Okay.
To share with our audience.
I can feel the frustration in her voice when we spoke about that issue. That's something. And in a nation, here in our nation, we're banning books. And in that nation, there aren't enough of them being printed or gotten into the right hands. I really feel that books are the way, and I think every student, wherever they are, deserves a book of her own, just as Virginia Woolf once said, a good woman needs a room of her own.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Fankam, Rita, you have a minute or two to just give us the big conclusion. So,
Thank you, Dr. Professor Bill. I am really grateful for this opportunity that Tuskegee University has given me to express myself. And he says he heard the frustration in my voice, but it ended up with some hope because to have another person who feels like I feel about the children with disabilities and their lack, it makes it easier for me to carry the burden. I know that somebody out there can help Cameroon one day. Help these children. You're not helping Cameroon. You come to Cameroon not to help the Cameroonian government, but to target the children with disabilities, and let's work together to make it possible for them to have a better learning environment. That's the hope I am taking from Tuskegee. Thank you, Professor Bill.
All right. Thank you very much. This was wonderful. And we will be very happy to have you within our walls here in Tuskegee at a future date. But I am happy you could afford to fly from Cameroon, come and, share your knowledge and the great things you are doing to change the status quo. So I will close right there, thanking you yet again that remember Andrew Foster was born not far away from Tuskegee where you are. He was born in Ainsley, Alabama. All right. And I just did a quick search and found he started 32 schools for the deaf across Africa. So what you are doing and that you came to Alabama is really encouraging in the sense that the idea of Black people getting an education by whatever means possible to help themselves all started here in the state of Alabama with Booker T. And now Andrew Foster took the reign. And you coming here, please just breathe the air that they breathe and take it back to Cameroon and then start. All right? You take the energy, take the inspiration and go. Don't be discouraged. Because remember this, I followed a famous Nigerian prophet, T.B. Joshua, who famously said, God does not use a discouraged servant. You are a servant. You cannot afford to be discouraged. You cannot afford to be frustrated. You cannot afford to throw in the towel. On this note, I said, thank you, Dr. Fankam-Rita, and you have a blessed and wonderful one. Dr. Fishkin, you do the same.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.